Paula, a hard-working nurse with a heart of gold, faced a moment of utter disrespect. You won't believe what she did after being humiliated, so stay tuned to find out in the full story. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today, and if this story of bravery and compassion resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now let's get into the heart of the story. The fluorescent lights of City General Hospital hummed, a constant, almost irritating drone that was the soundtrack to countless hurried footsteps and hushed conversations. It was a Tuesday, and the emergency room was its usual kind of chaos. Nurses in their brightly colored scrubs moved with a controlled frenzy, triaging patients, calming families, and generally keeping everything from falling completely apart. Among them was Paula, a nurse with 5 years under her belt, and an almost uncanny ability to remain calm even in the most stressful situations. Paula wasn't just good at her job, she genuinely cared about her patients. It wasn't just about administering medication or drawing blood. For Paula, it was about the person behind the illness or the injury. She'd sit and listen to stories, hold hands when fear was overwhelming, and always offer a kind word. It was exhausting work, physically and emotionally, but she knew she was making a difference, and that's what kept her going. On the other side of the hospital, in a stark, modern office that overlooked the city skyline, sat Mr. Robert Diego, the hospital's chief administrator. Mr. Diego was a man who valued numbers above all else. To him, the hospital wasn't a place for healing and care. It was a business, and his job was to make sure it was profitable. He saw nurses like Paula as expenses, people who, in his opinion, were often too slow, too emotional, and ultimately too costly. He had been pushing for changes, trying to cut costs and increase efficiency. He believed that the human element was a waste of time and money. One particular morning, Mr. Diego was in a foul mood. The monthly budget reports were in, and he was not happy. "Overtime is through the roof," he grumbled, tapping the report with his pen. "And the cost of supplies, it's ridiculous." He decided to go on a fact-finding mission to see if any savings could be made, and that is how he found himself heading to the emergency room. As he walked into the busy area, his eyes scanned the room, noting every little thing. He saw Paula leaning over a patient, a kind, reassuring look on her face. The patient was an older woman who had come in with chest pains. Paula was talking softly, her voice soothing, as she checked the woman's vital signs. Mr. Diego rolled his eyes. To him, it was a waste of time. He walked right up to Paula, interrupting her. "Nurse," he said, his tone sharp and impatient, "how long have you been with this patient?" Paula looked up, startled. "About 20 minutes, sir. I'm just trying to get her comfortable before we do the EKG." Mr. Diego tapped his watch. 20 minutes? 20 minutes for one patient? We have a full waiting room. This isn't a social club, nurse. This is a hospital. We need to move patients in and out quickly. Paula's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice professional. "Sir, the patient was very upset when she came in. I was making sure she was okay before we went on with her tests." Mr. Diego snorted. "Okay? Nurse, this is a hospital. We need to focus on the medical facts, not on the patient's feelings." He proceeded to give her a small lecture about efficiency and moving patients quickly. Paula felt her anger rising, but she knew it would not do any good. She nodded quietly and turned her attention back to her patient. Mr. Diego went on his way, feeling as though he had done his job. He had shown the staff that time was money. Little did he know, his words had hurt Paula deeply. She tried to shake off the encounter, but she couldn't help but feel that Mr. Diego's ways were wrong. She believed in the importance of human connection, that being a nurse was about caring for the soul as much as the body. The day went on, a blur of activity. Paula saw all kinds of people, an injured construction worker, a kid with a fever, and a young woman who was struggling with a panic attack. She did her best, staying late to make sure everyone had received the care they needed. It felt like a never-ending cycle, and the day felt like it lasted forever. Meanwhile, Mr. Diego was still in his office, focused on numbers and costs. He was determined to make City General profitable, no matter the human cost. He saw cuts and savings as victories. In his mind, empathy and compassion were a weakness. Late that night, as the city was slowly beginning to settle, Mr. Diego was still in his office when suddenly he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He clutched his chest, his face twisted in pain. He felt dizzy and he was having trouble breathing. He tried to stand up to get help, but his legs felt like jelly and he collapsed to the ground. Luckily, his secretary found him collapsed on the floor the next morning and immediately called for help. She was surprised to see his condition because Mr. Diego always came across as someone who was very strong and healthy. An ambulance rushed him to City General, the very hospital he was so keen on turning into a cost-cutting machine. He was wheeled straight into the emergency room, the same place he had been criticizing the day before. The ER was, of course, still busy. Doctors and nurses swarmed around him, taking his vitals and hooking him up to machines. He was confused and disoriented, his mind still reeling from the shock. He was also embarrassed. He couldn't believe he was here and in this condition. And then, as he was looking around at the staff, his eyes landed on Paula. She was there, calmly and efficiently working, and when she saw him, she looked directly at his eyes, and there was something in her eyes that made him uncomfortable. Paula, despite her previous interaction with Mr. Diego, approached him with the same quiet compassion she offered to everyone. She made eye contact with him, she took his hand and said, "Mr. Diego, it's okay, we're going to take care of you." Her words were soft and soothing, and it made him feel a little relieved. What's happening?" he rasped, his voice weak. "You've had a heart attack, sir," Paula explained, her tone gentle but firm. "We're going to do everything we can to help you." Mr. Diego, the man who valued numbers above all else, was now a patient, completely dependent on the very people he had criticized. The irony was not lost on him. As Paula and the rest of the team worked on him, he couldn't help but think about all the times he had looked down on the nurses and their work. Paula, while still being professional, noticed the flicker of fear and vulnerability in his eyes. She knew he was scared and in a lot of pain. She didn't bring up his previous behavior. She just went on with her job, giving him the best care that she could. She had always believed in putting aside her personal feelings when caring for a patient, and now she was determined to show Mr. Diego what real care truly looked like. Over the next few hours, Mr. Diego underwent a series of tests and procedures. He was constantly surrounded by nurses and doctors, and he began to see their work in a whole new light. He saw the dedication, the long hours, the sheer physical and emotional toll that they bore. He saw how much they cared and how hard they worked. He saw the compassion with which they treated all their patients. It was completely different from his point of view as an administrator. He began to feel a little ashamed, and he began to regret how he had treated the staff. As he lay in the hospital bed, surrounded by the machines, he had time to think. He thought about his life, about his work, and about his priorities. He thought about the numbers, the spreadsheets, and the budgets he had been so obsessed with. He started to realize that he had been so focused on money that he had forgotten about the real value of things. He had missed the whole point of the hospital. After several hours, his condition stabilized. He was moved to a private room in the intensive care unit. As he rested there, his mind was going through all kinds of thoughts. He remembered Paula's words, "We're going to take care of you." It wasn't just the words, it was the genuine kindness in her eyes that made him think. He had never met someone as genuine and kind as Paula. It hit him hard that the very person he had looked down on was now his source of comfort. The next morning, as the sun streamed through the window, Paula came into his room for a checkup. He looked at her, really looked at her, and this time he saw her in a whole different light. He saw the human being that she was. He saw her strength, and he saw her kindness. He saw that her work was far more valuable than any amount of money. He swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. "Nurse." "Paula," he said, his voice still weak but sincere. I owe you an apology." Paula stopped what she was doing and looked at him. "It's okay, Mr. Diego. You were sick. You needed help." "No," Mr. Diego said, shaking his head. "It's not about that. It's about how I treated you, how I treated everyone. I was so focused on the numbers, on the bottom line, that I completely forgot about the people. I forgot that this place, it's about caring for people." Paula listened, not interrupting. She could see that Mr. Diego's heart was changing. "You were right, Paula. Your job is not just about administering medicine. It is about caring. I can see it now. I've been looking at you and the other nurses since I got here, and I've noticed all of you are so passionate about what you do. I was so wrong about everything. I'm so ashamed of how I was before." His voice was trembling. Paula smiled softly. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, Mr. Diego," she said, "and it's never too late to change." Mr. Diego nodded, tears forming in his eyes. He looked up at her with his head full of thoughts. He said, "Paula, the way I was wrong. I didn't see that until now." Paula nodded and said, "I think the best way to start changing is to realize that we are all human, no matter what their job titles are. Respect is earned, not demanded, and what you did before, that wasn't okay." Over the next few weeks, as Mr. Diego recovered, he reflected more and more on his experience. He realized that he had been living in a bubble of numbers and that he had completely lost touch with the real world. He was learning so much and realized how wrong he was. He had been so close to the work being done, yet he was so far. He spent hours talking to Paula, asking her about her work, her experiences and her ideas. He saw her passion and dedication, and he began to understand that what she did was more than just a job. It was a calling. She was a healer, a caregiver, and a beacon of hope for so many. She was the true heart and soul of the hospital, and he had been so blind to see it before. He also made an effort to talk to the other staff members, to apologize for his past behavior, and to listen to their concerns. He wanted to start a new chapter in his life, and the first thing was to make things right. He made some changes to the structure of the hospital, and he worked with the nurses and the doctors to make things better for them. One day, when he was fully recovered, Mr. Diego called a staff meeting. He stood in front of all of them, and he spoke from the heart. "I have been wrong," he said, his voice clear and strong. "I have been so focused on the numbers that I have forgotten about the people. And that was wrong. I want to thank each one of you, because all of you make this place run smoothly. And I want to thank especially Nurse Paula for showing me the importance of what a nurse does. Without her, I probably would not be standing here today. She truly saved my life." He went on to announce that he was going to change the way the hospital was run, that he was going to put people first, that he was going to listen to the nurses and the doctors, and that he was going to make sure that they were given the respect and support they deserved. The staff cheered for him, they clapped for him, and they were glad to see the changes. It meant a lot to them. He created a committee that included nurses and doctors, and their job was to come up with solutions that would make the hospital a better place for both patients and the staff. He asked for Nurse Paula to lead it, and she accepted. Paula, with all her knowledge and experience, was the perfect choice to lead such a committee. She put in place some policies that helped create a better work environment for everyone. Under the new structure, the hospital changed. It became a better place to work, and it became a better place to heal. The staff became happier, and their performance grew higher. The patients were getting the best care, and they were all grateful for that. City General became a better hospital. Mr. Diego spent the rest of his tenure as a hospital administrator trying to make up for his past mistakes. He continued to listen to the staff, he worked hard to create a better working environment, and he never again put the numbers before people. He finally realized that profit wasn't the only measure of success. True success came from providing the best care for patients and ensuring their staff was happy and fulfilled. He'd learned that the hard way, and he was determined to spend the rest of his career paying that lesson forward. And it all started with a compassionate nurse in the emergency room who knew that true healing was more than just medicine. It was about kindness, empathy, and genuine human connection. He often thought about how he would have never known that if not for his heart attack. That terrible day turned out to be a blessing in disguise for him. He had finally understood the importance of life. He finally found the true meaning of being human. And that's the story of Paula. What do you think? Did this story resonate with you? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one. We appreciate you being a part of our community, and until next time, take care and keep shining your light.